The cryo chamber hummed with an ancient song, its resonance vibrating through the crystalline walls of the Zapirian research vessel. Blue-green light pulsed in rhythmic waves across its surface, casting shifting reflections on the faces of the aliens gathered around it. The chamber was an artifact, a relic from a species the galaxy had long assumed extinct humanity. Zapkal, the ship's commander, flexed his chitinous fingers, the translucent plates of his exoskeleton catching the glow of the bioluminescent diagnostics. His crest of sensory spines twitched in unease. This was not just an excavation, this was a resurrection. Quilex, the lead xenobiologist, adjusted the crystalline scanner hovering over the chamber's fogged surface. His faceted eyes narrowed as data streams flickered across the holographic display. "The stasis field is degrading," he murmured, his voice a soft chime of harmonics. "But the specimen is intact, remarkably so." The chamber's surface hissed, releasing a plume of vapor that curled like spectral fingers before dissipating into the sterile air. Inside lay the human, Colonel Janet Sheppard, her name etched in rusted metal on the chamber's side. Her skin was pale, her body wrapped in the remnants of a military-grade survival suit, its fabric brittle with age. The Zapirians had expected decay, degradation. Instead, they found preservation bordering on perfection. Zapkal's mandibles clicked in contemplation. The humans had been gone for centuries, wiped out in the Great Collapse, their empire reduced to ruins and whispered legends. The galaxy had moved on, dismissing them as another failed experiment in sentience. Too reckless, too emotional, too mortal. Yet, here she was, a ghost from the past, her vitals flickering back to life as if she had merely been sleeping. Quilex activated the revival sequence, the chamber's inner mechanisms whirred, injecting stimulants into Sheppard's bloodstream. Her fingers twitched first, a reflexive spasm, then a slow curl into a fist. Her chest rose in a shuddering breath, and then her eyes opened, dark, sharp, alive. Zapkal recoiled instinctively. There was no disorientation in her gaze, no groggy confusion, only awareness, cold, calculating, predatory. Sheppard's lips parted. The first sound she made was not a gasp, not a cry, but a laugh low, rasping, as if death itself had been nothing more than a joke. "Took you long enough," she croaked. The Zapirians exchanged glances. This was not how revivals were supposed to go. Subjects were supposed to be weak, disoriented, vulnerable. Sheppard sat up, her movements fluid despite centuries of stillness. She flexed her arms, rolled her shoulders, then stretched her neck with a crack that made Quilex's spines flare in alarm. "You're not what I expected," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the crystalline architecture, the pulsing energy cores, the insectile figures surrounding her. "But then again, neither am I." Zapkal hesitated. This was wrong. Humans were supposed to be fragile. Their lifespans were short, their bodies weak compared to the hardened biology of the galactic species. Yet Sheppard moved like a predator testing its limbs after hibernation. Not weakened, but primed. Quilex's scanner beeped urgently. He stared at the readings, his faceted eyes widening. "Commander, her cellular regeneration is accelerating. Her muscle density, it's increasing." Sheppard smirked. "Cryo. Sleep wasn't just preservation for us," she said, rolling her wrists. "It was training." The chamber's diagnostics flared red. Warnings cascaded across the display. Vital surge detected. Neural activity exceeds baseline. Physical capacity. Fey of pre-stasis levels. Zapkal's spines flattened against his carapace. The humans hadn't just survived their extinction. They had evolved in their slumber, and now one of them was awake. The bioluminescent glow of the Zapirian medical bay pulsed in time with Sheppard's heartbeat. Quilex adjusted the crystalline scanner, its blue-green tendrils of energy tracing the contours of the human's body. The readings defied logic. Her cells weren't merely repairing, they were optimizing, rewriting themselves with an efficiency no natural biology should possess. The cryopods hadn't just preserved her, they had refined her. Zapple watched from the observation platform, his chitinous fingers tightening around the railing. The humans had been a footnote in galactic history, a species too reckless to survive their own wars, too primitive to master interstellar travel before their homeworld collapsed. Yet here stood one of them, breathing, adapting, as if centuries of stasis had been nothing more than a deep stretch before battle. Sheppard flexed her fingers, studying the way the light refracted through the chamber's translucent walls. The Zapirian architecture was beautiful, in a way that made her teeth ache, all sleek curves and shimmering angles like frozen music. It was nothing like the brutalist steel and reinforced bulkheads of human ships. She turned her head slightly, catching Zapple's reflection in the polished surface of a nearby console. His faceted eyes tracked her every movement, his spines twitching in a rhythm she couldn't decipher. Quilex hissed through his mandibles, the sound like glass scraping glass. "Commander, her nervous system is—" "I can see the scans," Zapple interrupted. The numbers didn't lie. Sheppard's reflexes were sharpening by the second, her muscles coiling with a density that should have torn human tendons. And her brain, the scanner flickered, its crystalline core overheating, as it struggled to process the neural activity flaring across Sheppard's cortex. Synapses fired in patterns the machine had no reference for, lighting up regions that, by all known biology, should have been dormant. Sheppard exhaled, slow and deliberate, and the air in the chamber seemed to thicken. "You're wondering if I'm dangerous," she said, not looking at them. Zapple didn't answer. She grinned. "Smart." A chime echoed through the chamber. Subtle, but Sheppard's head snapped toward it instantly. Her pupils dilated, black swallowing the green of her irises for a fraction of a second before returning to normal. Quilex flinched. Sheppard ignored him, tilting her head as if listening to something beyond the hum of alien machinery. "Your ship's power core," she murmured. "It's singing." Zapple's spine stiffened. The Vexillium's heart was a living crystal, its resonance tuned to frequencies only Zapirian biology could interpret. Yet Sheppard's lips parted slightly, as if she could taste the harmonics. Impossible. The realization struck him like a plasma round. The humans hadn't just slept through their extinction. They had listened, and now they were awake. And hungry. The chamber's blue-green luminescence pulsed in time with the Vexillium's core, casting shifting geometric shadows across the walls. Zapple watched Sheppard's face, the way her pupils contracted and expanded, the minute twitch of her jaw as if she were chewing on the ship's resonance. Quilex's fingers danced over his data, crystal recording every micro-expression. The human shouldn't have been able to perceive the core's frequency, let alone react to it. Yet here she stood, breathing in sync with the thrum of a technology that predated her species' first steps into the stars. Sheppard exhaled, long and slow, and the air between them crackled with something unspoken. Zapple's secondary eyelids flicked sideways in unease. He had expected a relic, a fragile, half-feral creature pulled from the dark. She turned her head toward the far wall, where the crystalline panels throbbed with energy. "You're running diagnostics," she said. "Something's off in your tertiary power relays?" Quilex's crest flared in alarm. She was right. The Vexillium had been limping since their last engagement with the Crick swarm, its energy flows sluggish in the lower decks. But the malfunction was buried deep in the ship's bioneural network, invisible to all but the most sensitive scans. And Sheppard had heard it. Zapple's claws flexed against the grip of his sidearm. This wasn't just enhanced perception, it was intuition honed to a razor's edge. The humans had always been tactile, reactive, but this was evolution, or devolution, a predator's senses sharpened by centuries of artificial hibernation. Sheppard's lips curled. "You're wondering if I'm broken?" Quilex hesitated. "Are you?" She laughed, a sound like fractured glass. "Oh, scientist, you don't even know the right questions to ask." The ship's core hit a dissonant harmonic, and Sheppard's entire body tensed. Her fingers twitched, as if itching to reach into the machinery and fix it. Zapple had seen that gesture before, in the old war footage. Human engineers, elbow deep in burning wreckage, rerouting systems with bare hands and sheer stubbornness. A memory surfaced, the last transmission from the Harbinger's light, a Zapirian dreadnought crippled by human borders. "They don't just fight us," the captain had gasped. "They understand us." Now, standing in the presence of a woman who could taste his ship's pain, Zapple finally grasped the horror behind those words. Sheppard tilted her head again. "Your core's destabilizing." Quilex data. Crystal chimed a warning. The Vexillium shuddered, and in the half-light, Sheppard's smile was a blade. The Vexillium groaned, a sound like tectonic plates shifting beneath the weight of a dying star. Zapple's crest flared in alarm, bioluminescent veins pulsing electric blue beneath his chitinous skin. He had commanded this ship for 3 solar cycles, navigated the gravitational tides of collapsed nebulae, dueled with pirate fleets in the debris fields of dead worlds. Never had he heard its crystalline bones scream like this. Quilex manipulator limbs trembled as his diagnostics array spat jagged glyphs into the air. The ship's core, a labyrinth of living crystal and quantum-stabilized plasma, was unraveling. Energy signatures flared in erratic spirals, bleeding teal light through the chamber's translucent walls. The harmonic dissonance deepened, vibrating through the deck plates like the growl of some primordial beast, and Sheppard smiled, not the bared teeth threat display of a cornered animal, not the hollow rictus of fear. This was the expression of a mathematician glimpsing the elegant solution to an impossible equation. Her fingers twitched again. Zapple's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a millisecond, an instinctive blink against the vertigo of realization. She wasn't just observing the malfunction, she was tracking it. Following the cascading failures through the ship's architecture, with a precision no Zapirian sensor suite could match. Quilex's voice crackled through the comms, thin with panic. The containment lattice. Its Sheppard moved. Not the sluggish, gravity, dragged motion of a creature newly thawed from cryo. Sleep. Not the disoriented stumble of a temporal castaway. She crossed the chamber in 3 strides, boots striking the deck with the rhythmic certainty of a soldier advancing on familiar terrain. Zapple's combat reflexes screamed at him to intercept, to stop this human from reaching the core's access node. But something deeper, older, the primal instinct that warns a prey species when it stands in the shadow of an apex predator, locked his limbs in place. Sheppard reached the control nexus. Her hands, pale, scarred, so fragile, looking compared to the chitinous strength of Zapirian manipulators, danced across the interface. No hesitation, no trial and error. She knew the system, impossible. The Vexillium was a Zapirian warship, its technology grown from living crystal matrices, its logic pathways encoded in electric resonance patterns no human had ever encountered. The dissonance stuttered. Quilex data, crystal flared gold in shock, as the core's pulse steadied, the erratic spirals smoothing into concentric rings of stable energy. The ship's groan faded to a whisper, then silence. Sheppard exhaled, rolling her shoulders like a fighter shaking off the first round's fatigue. When she turned back to them, her eyes were alight with something that made Zapple's ventral plating tighten. "You built your dampeners in series," she said, as if explaining basic arithmetic to a child. "Efficient for containing standard plasma flares. But when the 3rd stage regulator fails," she mimed an explosion with her fingers. "Cascade." Quilex's antennae quivered. "That configuration is classified." Sheppard tilted her head. That same predatory angle that made Zapple's spinal ridges itch. Not to someone who's been inside a Zapirian reactor before. The silence that followed was a living thing, thick with the weight of histories, half remembered, and wars best left buried. Zapple's mind raced. The last human Zapirian conflict had ended centuries ago. Their records claimed total victory. The humans, fractured and broken, had retreated to their dying world, too primitive to challenge the galaxy again. But this woman, this soldier, spoke of their technology like a veteran recalling old battlefields. A terrible suspicion crystallized in his mind. Sheppard saw it click. Her smile widened. "Oh," she murmured. "You really thought we were extinct, didn't you?" The Vexillium's core hummed softly behind her, its light painting her silhouette in eerie teal. Somewhere in the ship's depths, Sergeant Weir's cryopod hissed open. The Vexillium's corridors hummed with an unfamiliar tension, the crystalline walls pulsing blue, green like a wounded thing. Zapkel's claws flexed against the command console, the smooth surface yielding slightly under pressure. A rare flaw in Zapirian engineering, one he had never noticed before. Because you never had reason to fear before. The thought slithered through his mind, unwelcome. On the main display, Sheppard stood motionless, her stance relaxed, but her eyes tracking every flicker of movement in the chamber. She was waiting, not for permission, not for orders, for something else. Behind her, the reactor core's energy swirls deepened, casting jagged shadows across the deck. The light caught the edges of her uniform, faded insignia, the frayed seams of fabric that had no business surviving centuries. Yet it had, just like her. Quilek's voice crackled through the calm, thin with forced calm. "Commander, the secondary cryopod." Zapkel didn't let him finish. "Seal it." A beat of hesitation. "It's already open." The words landed like a plasma round to the thorax. Sergeant Adam Weir's first breath was a knife dragged through frozen lungs. His body remembered before his mind did, muscles coiling, hands flexing against the pod's restraints. The cold had preserved him, but it hadn't gentled him. His nerves screamed back to life in a riot of pins and needles, synapses firing in chaotic bursts. Movement, shapes resolved above him, tall, angular, their carapaces gleaming under the chamber's teal glow. Not human, not friendly. His fingers found the release latch before his vision cleared. Sheppard didn't turn when the alarms blared. She didn't need to. She felt it. The shift in the air, the way the Zapirians' bioluminescent markings flared in startled unison. Their mistake was written in the frantic darting of their faceted eyes, the too quick adjustments of their weapon grips. They had expected corpses. They had woken hunters. A smile tugged at her lips as the first distant crunch of shattered crystal echoed through the ship's bones. Weir moved like a storm-given flesh. The Zapirian guards had barely raised their pulse rifles when he was among them. His fist connected with the first one's thorax, the chitinous plating buckling under the impact. The alien folded with a wet crack, its breath huffing out in a cloud of iridescent vapor. The second guard fired. Weir sidestepped on instinct, the plasma bolt searing past his shoulder. The heat kissed his skin, a familiar sting. His body knew this dance, had known it since the first time Head charged a Zapirian trench line, back when their empire still pretended humans were just another upstart species to be crushed. His elbow found the guard's throat. The alien gagged, its mandibles flaring as it staggered back. Weir didn't let it recover. He wrenched the rifle free and swung it like a club, the stock connecting with a satisfying thud. He exhaled, his breath fogging in the chilled air. The rifle hummed in his hands, its design unfamiliar, but its purpose brutally clear. Somewhere above, the ship's systems warbled a distress call. Weir hefted the weapon and broke into a run. Zapkel's console lit with damage reports. Breach in sector face security feeds flickered. Glimpses of a human silhouette moving too fast, striking too hard. Quilek's voice was shrill. "Their metabolic readings, Commander. Their cells are repairing at a rate that..." The data scrolled past, a relentless tide of impossibilities. Enhanced muscle density, neural activity spiking beyond Zapirian thresholds. Even the cryo fluid traces in Weir's bloodstream were being purged faster than their med scanners could track. Sheppard's voice cut through the chaos. "You put us on ice, thinking we'd wake up weak." Her reflection glowed in the view screen, backlit by the reactor's pulse. You should have let us rot. The Vexillium shuddered as someone struck its heart. Section Fey. The archives burned. The Vexillium's crystalline corridors pulsed with emergency light, blue-green luminescence flickering like a dying star. Zapkel's claws scraped against the hexagonal command console as another damage alert flared. Sector Fey, the archives, the heart of their knowledge, the proof of their supremacy. And it was burning. Quilek's tendrils trembled as he parsed the data streams. The human Weir wasn't just moving through the ship. He was erasing it, every security feed that caught him dissolved into static moments later, as if the air itself recoiled from his passage. His biosignature was a storm, metabolic rates accelerating beyond Zapirian thresholds, muscles reforging themselves mid-stride. The cryo-fluid that should have left him sluggish was boiling out of his pores in silvered vapor, his cells devouring the toxins like kindling. Commander, the archival core? Quilek's voice fractured. Zapkel didn't need the report. The Vexillium's crystalline architecture was designed to withstand supernovae, its data vaults shielded by quantum encryption and bioluminescent alloys. Yet now, the walls of Sector Fey rippled with heat distortion, hexagonal panels blackening at the edges. The human had done this with what? A scavenged sidearm? A fist? Sheppard's voice slithered through the comms, calm as a blade settling between ribs. You studied us, catalogued our wars, our failures, thought you knew what we were. A pause, then the sound of something heavy crashing. A support beam, a body. You missed the footnotes? Zapkel's mandibles clenched. The archives weren't just burning, they were unmaking. Centuries of research on humanity. Their wars, their fragile biology, their laughably primitive tech, all curling into ash. Because the humans in those records had been weak, fragile. These were something else. A proximity alert screamed. Weir had breached the auxiliary conduit, cutting off the bridge's escape routes. Quilek's tendrils lashed as he pulled up the last clear image. The human silhouetted against a corridor of melting crystal, his eyes reflecting the flames like a predator's in the dark. His stance wasn't that of a cornered animal. It was the stillness of a storm coiling to strike. Zapkel's carapace prickled. They'd woken more than a relic. They'd woken a reckoning. The Vexillium groaned as its own systems turned against it. The human sabotage worming through the electric pathways like a virus. Sheppard had done this, not with brute force, but with a single command hissed into the reactor's core, her voice laced with a code their systems shouldn't have understood. But they did, because the archives had missed one truth. Humanity didn't rot, it adapted. And now, as the ship's spine fractured and the lights died, Zapkel realized they'd never been the hunters here. They'd been the prey. The Vexillium shuddered like a dying beast, its crystalline veins pulsing erratically as the human sabotage metastasized through its systems. Zapkel's mandibles clenched, his carapace vibrating with the ship's death throes. Across the bridge, Quilek's bioluminescent nodes flickered crimson panic, made visible in the Zapirian's natural language. The human, Weir, was gone. Not dead, not fleeing. Zapkel's tactical display fizzed with static, but the last captured image burned in his mind. The human silhouette wreathed in the molten blue, green runoff of dissolving bulkheads. His stance coiled, his eyes reflecting firelight like twin suns under eclipse. That stillness. It wasn't fear. It was the quiet of a blade being sharpened. A tremor rocked the deck. The Vexillium's luminescence dimmed, its organic circuitry hemorrhaging energy. Zapkel's claws flexed against the command console, the once pristine crystalline surface, now spiderwebbed with fractures. Seal the tertiary junctions. He pulsed through the neural link, his command laced with pheromones the crew would interpret as urgency, not desperation. Quilek's tendrils spasmed. The human's code rewrote our encryption protocols. The doors obey him now. A hiss of escaping gas slithered through the vents. The air tasted metallic, charged with the ozone stench of overloaded power cores. Not Zapirian, not even organic. It was the ship itself, its bio-electric nervous system shrieking as something forced its way deeper into the Vexillium's heart. The lights died. For 3 heartbeats, the bridge drowned in perfect blackness. When the emergency luminescence flickered on, it painted the walls in jagged streaks of blood, red. And standing in the ruined arch of the main corridor wreathed in steam and the corpse, light of dying crystals, was Weir. Head changed. The cryo-sleep's residue should have crippled him. Muscles atrophied, reflexes dulled. Instead, his body hummed with lethal precision, every movement a study in controlled violence. The stolen Zapirian sidearm in his grip glowed faintly, its bioluminescent charge syncing with his pulse. But it was his eyes that froze Zackel's secondary heart. They burned with an unnatural radiance. The pupils dilated too wide, the irises haloed by a corona of gold. Some relic of centuries spent sleeping in the void, some adaptation the archives had never recorded. Weir took a step forward. The deck groaned under his weight, not from mass, from intent. Quilex lunged, his defensive spines flaring, his tendrils lashing out with enough voltage to stop a charging Threxian hound. A whisper of displaced air, then Quilex was on the ground, his left forelimb bent at a grotesque angle, his neural nodes spitting erratic sparks. Weir stood over him, the stolen weapon now pressed to the scientist's primary ocular cluster. "You woke me up," the human said, his voice a graveled rasp, as if dredged from the depths of some long-buried tomb. "Now let's talk about what else you dug up." Zackel's carapace went ice, cold, because he understood now, the cryo pod hadn't been a coffin. It had been a crucible, and whatever had stepped out of it wasn't just a soldier. It was something forged. The observation chamber thrummed with the erratic pulse of emergency lighting, casting jagged blue-green shadows across the crystalline walls. Zackel's mandibles twitched, his neural clusters firing in rapid succession as he processed the scene before him. Quilex lay broken at the human's feet, his bioelectric tendrils spasming uselessly against the deck. The scientist's primary ocular cluster flickered, its usual luminescent glow dimmed to a sickly pulse. Weir loomed over him, his stance relaxed, almost bored, as if the act of dismantling a Zapirian's defenses was no more taxing than breathing. Zackel's carapace tightened. This wasn't supposed to happen. The humans were extinct, a footnote in the archives, a cautionary tale of a species too reckless to survive. Their wars had burned their cradle world to cinders, their last transmissions fading into static millennia ago. The cryopod had been a curiosity, a relic pulled from the wreckage of some forgotten battlefield, its occupant presumed as lifeless as the rest of his kind. But the thing standing before him now was anything but dead. Weir turned his head, slow, deliberate, and met Zackel's gaze. His eyes were wrong, too bright, too aware. The gold flecks in his irises caught the light, like shards of molten metal, and for the first time in his life, Zackel felt the primal urge to retreat. A chime echoed through the chamber. The council was calling. Zackel hesitated, his command spines flattened against his carapace in submission, but his secondary limbs twitched toward the concealed disruptor at his hip. Weir's lips curled, not a smile, a predator's baring of teeth. "Go ahead," the human said, voice low. "Answer them?" The hollow display flared to life before Zackel could react. The council chamber materialized in fractured light, its towering crystalline pillars humming with restrained energy. High Prelate Vexis dominated the projection, her segmented carapace gleaming under the chamber's ambient glow. "Report," she demanded, her voice a modulated hiss. Zackel opened his mandibles, then froze as Weir shifted his weight. The human hadn't moved. Not truly, but the implication was clear. A warning, a promise. "The specimen is awake," Zackel managed, his vocalizer straining to keep static from his words. Vex's ocular clusters narrowed, and a beat of silence. Then Weir stepped forward, into the projection's field of view. The council recoiled as one. Vex's spines flared, her bioluminescent patterns flashing crimson in alarm. The other prelates hissed, their tendrils lashing in reflexive threat displays. Weir didn't react. He simply stood there, letting them look, letting them see what they had woken. "You thought we were gone," he said, quiet, almost conversational, "but we were just sleeping." Vexis recovered first. "You are one?" she snapped. "A remnant. A ghost. The human species is still here." The deck vibrated, a deep resonant thrum that shuddered through the ship's crystalline superstructure. Zackel's neural nodes screamed a warning an instant before the proximity alarms blared. Something was coming. The holo display flickered, then split into a secondary feed, a tactical overlay of the system's edge. A ship emerged from the void, its silhouette angular, brutal, a jagged scar against the stars. Human design. Zackel's carapace went numb, because it wasn't just a ship, it was a warship, and it was broadcasting a single repeating transmission on all frequencies. A voice, distorted by time but unmistakable. Colonel Janet Sheppard's voice. "This is the UEF Vanguard." It crackled. "Respond if you can hear us." Weir exhaled, slow and satisfied. "Told you," he said, and the galaxy burned. Section Fey. The puppeteers the Vanguard emerged from the void, like a blade unsheathed, a brutal angular silhouette against the starfield, its hull scarred by centuries of silent travel. It was not a ship built for beauty. Every line spoke of violence, every thruster burned a promise of retribution. Zackel's neural nodes pulsed with warning glyphs, his carapace tightening in instinctive dread. The human warship dwarfed his own vessel, its armor a composite of layered alloys and reactive plating, its weapons arrays bristling with dormant menace. The Zapirian scanners struggled to parse its systems. Too many signatures overlapped. Too many power cores hummed in sync, as if the ship itself were a living thing, coiled and waiting. Quilek's crystalline fingers danced over the hollow display, her bioluminescent nodes flickering in agitation. Their energy signatures, they don't match any known human technology from the archives. Because they shouldn't. The humans had been gone for centuries, and yet here they were. Not extinct. Sergeant Weir stood motionless, his expression unreadable, but his pulse was steady. Too steady. Like a predator watching its prey, realized the trap had already been sprung. The Vanguard's transmission repeated, Sheppard's voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "This is the UEF Vanguard. Respond if you can hear us." Zackel hesitated, a fatal mistake. The moment stretched, brittle, then the Vanguard moved. Not with the graceful arcs of Zapirian drives, but with a sudden, brutal acceleration, its engines flaring white. Hot the ship lunged, closing the distance between them in a maneuver that should have shredded lesser vessels. Alarms shrieked across the bridge. "Evasive!" Zackel barked, but it was too late. The Vanguard locked onto them, not with weapons. A torrent of encrypted signals flooded the Zapirian systems, bypassing firewalls like they were nothing, seizing control of secondary systems before the crew could react. The holo displays flickered, then reformed. Not in Zapirian glyphs, but in human script. Access granted, Quilex recoiled. They're inside our network, because humans had never just fought with ships and guns. They fought with code, with deception, with the patience of a species that had spent millennia learning how to break things and how to rebuild them stronger. Weir finally smiled. "You thought we were extinct," he said, voice low, "but we were just waiting." The Vanguard's hangar bays opened. Drones poured out, not the sleek, crystalline constructs of the Zapirians, but jagged, asymmetrical machines, their edges serrated, their movements erratic. They moved like living things, like a swarm, and they moved fast. Zackel's mind raced. This wasn't just a warship. It was a hive, and the humans weren't just survivors. They were puppeteers. The galaxy had forgotten them. Now it would remember. The Vanguard's drones spilled into the void like shards of broken glass, their movements jagged, unpredictable. They didn't fly in formation. They swarmed, splitting apart and reforming in chaotic patterns that made Zapkle's tactical displays useless. The Zapirian fleet had been trained to counter precision, to anticipate calculated maneuvers. But this was human warfare, messy, adaptive, relentless. Quilek's tendrils twitched as he watched the data streams flicker. The human intrusion wasn't just a breach, it was a rewriting. Their code slithered through the crystalline pathways of Zapirian systems, corrupting command protocols, rerouting power flows, turning the elegant symmetry of alien technology into something fractured, something wrong. And then the Vanguard spoke. Not through comms, not through any channel the Zapirians could trace. It spoke through their own ship. The main holodisplay flickered, the serene blue, green glow of Zapirian interfaces dissolving into a storm of static. Then, an image resolved, Colonel Sheppard, her face illuminated by the cold light of the Vanguard's bridge. She didn't look like a relic. She looked like a predator who had finally scented blood. Zapkle. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, but it carried the weight of centuries. You woke us up. Now you get to see why the galaxy put us to sleep. The transmission cut, and the Vanguard moved. It wasn't the sluggish awakening of an ancient vessel. It was the sudden, terrifying lunge of something that had been coiled in the dark, waiting. Its engines flared, not the clean pulse of ion drives, but the ragged, roaring burn of fusion fire, the kind of propulsion built for war, not efficiency. The ship twisted in space, its angular hull aligning with the Zapirian flagship, like a blade finding a throat. Zapkle's claws dug into the command console. Evasive. The Vanguard's railguns fired, not the single precise shots of Zapirian weaponry. Projectiles streaked across the void at relativistic speeds, each one a sliver of tungsten wrapped in a corona of plasma. They didn't just pierce the flagship's shields, they shattered them, the crystalline matrices overloading and cascading failures. The first impacts tore through the hull, leaving molten craters in their wake. The second volley struck deeper, ripping into power conduits, sending arcs of blue-green energy spiraling through the ship's veins. Alarms wailed, the deck shuddered, and then the drones landed. They didn't dock. They didn't request access. They burrowed, serrated cutting tools whirred to life, carving through the flagship's outer layers like teeth through flesh. Some carried viral payloads, their code slithering into the ship's nervous system, turning defensive systems against their own crew. Others unfolded into spidery, multi-limbed horrors, their optics glowing a dull, hateful red as they scuttled into the corridors. Zapkle had faced pirates, rebels, even the occasional rogue AI. This was something older, something that didn't just want to win, it wanted to break them. Quilek staggered as another impact rocked the ship. His mind raced, grasping for solutions, for understanding. The humans hadn't just survived the long dark. They had adapted. Their technology wasn't just preserved, it was refined, honed by centuries of simulated war, of running battle scenarios in the depths of cryo, dreams. And now they were awake. Now they were angry. The last thing Zapkle saw before the lights failed was Sergeant Weir's face on a fractured display, his smile sharp as a knife. You should have left us sleeping. Then the Vanguard fired its final shot, and the stars went dark. The Vanguard's final shot was not a weapon. It was an absence, a perfect, devouring blackness that swallowed the Zapirian flagship's crystalline energy signatures whole. The void between stars had never felt so absolute, so hungry. For a single suspended moment, the battle froze. The remaining Zapirian vessels, their bioluminescent hulls flickering in distress, hesitated. Their commanders had no protocols for this, no tactics, no language for what they were witnessing. Humanity had not just returned. They had brought the dark with them. Zapir's mandibles trembled as the last of the vanguard systems bled into the silence. His ship, the luminous Will, was crippled. Its crystalline spires shattered, its organic energy cores flickering like dying embers. The bridge was a graveyard of fractured displays and slumped forms, the air thick with the acrid scent of ionized plasma, and something worse. Fear. He had commanded fleets, crushed rebellions, brought entire systems to heel beneath the Zapirian dominion's gleaming banners. This was not war. This was reckoning. Quilek staggered to his side, his carapace streaked with coolant leaks, his primary limbs twitching with neural feedback. The energy readings? He rasped, his voice a broken static. It's not a weapon. It's a cage. Zapir didn't need the data streams to confirm it. He could feel it, the way the Vanguard's blackened silhouette seemed to drink the light around it, the way their scanners fizzed into useless static when they tried to probe its edges. The humans had not just disabled their systems, they had erased them, and in that erasure, something worse stirred. Colonel Sheppard's voice crackled through the Vanguard's dead channels, her tone calm, almost conversational. You studied us, dissected our history, thought you understood what we were. A pause, the kind that settles into bone. You didn't. The Zapirian fleet's remaining ships shuddered as their systems spasmed, not from attack, but from something far more insidious. Their crystalline matrices, designed to resonate with the harmony of the cosmos, recoiled. The humans had not just weaponized their own technology, they had weaponized silence, the absence of a signal, the gap between heartbeats, the quiet before the storm. And in that quiet, the Zapirians finally understood. Humanity had not slept, they had waited. Sergeant Weir's face flickered across every surviving Zapirian screen, his grin a blade in the dark. You thought we were extinct. His image dissolved into static. We were just dreaming, not the clean, electric blue of Zapirian energy cores, not the soft bioluminescence of their living ships, the kind that had once scorched Earth's skies, the kind that had forged empires from blood and steel, the kind that did not ask for surrender. And as the Vanguard's engines roared to life, wreathed in the ancient hungry glow of human defiance, the stars themselves seemed to flinch. Zapir closed his eyes, and for the first time in his long, proud life, the Vanguard did not move like a Zapirian ship. It did not glide, did not pulse with the rhythmic elegance of luminous drives. It lunged, a predator uncoiling from the dark, its engines vomiting raw plasma in a trail that seared the void. The Zapirian fleet, still reeling from the revelation of human survival, scrambled to react. Shields flared, weapons charged. The Vanguard's first salvo was not a volley of missiles, not a beam of concentrated destruction. It was something simpler, something older, tungsten rods, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, punched through the lead Zapirian cruiser like fists through wet paper. The crystalline hull shattered, its elegant geometry reduced to glittering shrapnel. The second cruiser fared no better. Its energy shields, designed to diffuse and dissipate directed plasma, crumpled beneath the brute force impact of mass and velocity. Zapir's mandibles trembled as the tactical display updated in real time. This was not war as the galaxy understood it. This was butchery. The humans were not done. A new signal blared across the comms, raw and unfiltered. No encryption, no protocol, just a voice, rough with static and something darker. The name was a blade in the silence. You wanted to see what we became. On the view screen, the Vanguard silhouette twisted, its hull plates shifting like the scales of some waking leviathan. Along its spine, panels slid aside, revealing rows of cylindrical housings, missile pods, but not the sleek, humming projectiles of Zapirian design. These were blunt, ugly, stamped with warnings in a language the galaxy had tried to forget. Here we are, the pods fired. Zapir had time to register the projectiles' trajectories, Not aimed at his ships, not aimed at anything before they detonated. Just gravity. Space itself convulsed as the warheads activated, their cores vomiting artificial singularities into existence. The nearest Zapirian cruiser bent, its hull screaming as tidal forces wrenched it into an impossible curve. Then, the singularity collapsed. The cruiser was gone. Not destroyed. Zackel's claws dug into his command console, the living crystal cracking beneath his grip. This was not technology. This was heresy, a violation of every law the galaxy had woven to keep the stars safe. And the humans had done it casually. The Vanguard pivoted, its engines flaring as it aligned for another pass. Zackel closed his eyes. He had come to witness extinction. Instead, he had unleashed it. And as the human warship burned toward his fleet, wreathed in the fire of 1,000 dead suns, he understood one terrible truth: the galaxy would never be the same.